Imagine feeling like a superhero every time you step foot in the gym. You're breaking PRs every week and saying goodbye to plateaus since those rarely happen anymore. I'm talking about getting bigger and stronger at faster rates, pumps are damn near skin tearing, and your recovery times are at an all-time low, so consider fatigue as history. That is just a day in the life of a bulk.
Bulking literally helped me go from 110 to 185, relatively lean, in 1.4 years. And yes, 1.4 years. We are all pushing the bulk to 2 years. And in today's video, I'll be giving you the keys to the ultimate bulk, covering training, diet, recovery, plus some mistakes you should avoid making as a beginner.
First off, let's talk about diet. Should you dirty bulk or clean bulk?
First, let me explain.
Dirty bulking is when you eat as much as possible without tracking. Since processed foods are easier to get down and usually higher in calorie, most people end up binge eating them to the point where they overeat and gain unnecessary body fat.
Because bro, let's be honest, no one's trying to binge eat chicken and rice.
Not only do you face all these negative side effects, but your training quality also decreases, given you're constantly feeling bloated and sluggish from all the trash food you're eating, leading to strength loss and increased fatigue in most cases. But I guess at least the pumps are decent, given you're literally consuming enough sodium to double your blood pressure. Good luck, bro.
On the other hand, clean bulking is when you eat a more controlled caloric surplus with a more nutrient-based diet with some occasional dirty calories to spare.
And given that you're eating in a smaller surplus, you won't gain as much extra body fat. And since you aren't overindulging in as much junk food, given the majority of your calories come from clean foods, your performance in the gym will boost, resulting in more muscle gain.
So in short, clean bulking is the way to go. Let's talk about how much you should be eating, aka the caloric surplus.
I'd suggest eating in a small to medium surplus between 200 to 400 calories over your maintenance, meaning the calories you need in order to maintain your current weight, which can be found with the help of an online calorie calculator website that I'll link in the description. Plug in your weight and height. Once you get your maintenance, just add between 200 to 400 calories onto that number depending on how quickly you'd like to gain muscle. And there's how much you should be eating daily. But keep in mind that just like your training, you should also be progressively overloading your diet. Current maintenance is 2,500 and you decide to eat 2,800, which is a 300 calorie surplus. As you gain weight and eventually get bigger, 2,800 will become your new maintenance, meaning you'll no longer be eating in a surplus. To avoid getting stuck at the same weight and plateauing, add on 100 calories bi-weekly, which is every 2 weeks. Now on to how much protein you should be consuming.
Make this as short and sweet as possible. You don't need as much protein as you think you do. Most people may argue that you need over 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein. I wouldn't even say you need a gram per pound.
This is simply because protein aids in the production of muscle tissue. And think of it, if you weigh 150, do you really believe that all 150 of those pounds comes from lean muscle mass? Obviously not, given that the body mass is made up of a ton of different things like your bone mass, organ mass, fat mass, and so many other components. So out of that 150, maybe 60 to 90 pounds is actually fat-free muscle mass. But do not get me wrong, I'm not telling you to eat 60 grams of protein daily and expecting to make gains. I simply want to use this to put this into perspective that you do not need to be eating over 1.5 grams per pound of body weight. Enough with the boring stuff, now let's get into the fun part. The training.
Because no matter how hard you try, you cannot out-eat bad training. It is the main driver of muscle growth. Train like a bum and get bum results.
First off, let's talk about intensity. In other words, how hard should I be training? Pretty simple. You should be allocating every single ounce of your attention towards your reps in reserve, or RIR for short. But what even is that, you may ask? It's simply the number of reps you believed you still had in you at the end of your set. For example, training to absolute failure would mean that you had 0 RIR left. Why does this matter? This is because, put simply, every time you train, motor neurons activate, sending signals indicating the body to grow muscle as a form of adaptation. The harder you train, the bigger the signal is. To the most important part of your training, progressive overload. It's literally just making sure that you are getting stronger on every exercise over time. But there's a common misconception that you should only be applying progressive overload on compound movements like the squat, bench, and deadlift, whilst using lighter weight on isolation movements like bicep curls, lateral raises, and tricep extensions, since compounds are seen as the main builders whilst isolations are only viewed as accessories, which just isn't true at all. As compounds should be included in your training program, you should still be progressing on isolations because compounds don't do that great of a job at individually targeting muscles. For example, trying to hit triceps by only progressing on the bench press. While it could work, it would take longer than it would than simply applying progressive overload on a tricep dominant exercise like the tricep extension.
And now the most underrated component, which is your recovery.
Sleep is extremely important to take into account on a bulk, as it speeds up the rate at which you recover, making it a lot easier to utilize those extra calories in order to train harder, which will in turn lead to muscle growth.
Not only that, but sleep aids in the production of hormones like GH and testosterone, hormones that greatly amplify muscle growth. Train as hard, eat as much as you want, but as long as you're not sleeping and recovering, you will never optimize muscle growth to its full fullest potential.
I leave you, let's go over what was covered in this video so that hopefully you can leave here with some new knowledge. We covered eating, where we came to the conclusion that you should be eating in a surplus of around 200 to 400 calories. And we also covered maintenance calories, which are the calories you need in order to maintain your current weight. Second, we covered training. In short, make sure you're getting stronger every week. We also learned about training with intensity and training with reps in reserve or RIR. Lastly, we spoke about sleep and how it's important for recovery, fatigue management, and essential for hormone production.
If you enjoyed the video and maybe even learned something, please drop a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.